A major warning for anyone involved in the Israel-Hamas protests that we've seen on college campuses. President Trump says all federal funding will end for colleges that allow these illegal protests that we've seen since the start of October 7th and the attack in 2023. This morning, President Trump took to Truth Social, saying that these so-called agitators who are not American will be imprisoned or deported, even going so far as to say that American students will be expelled or arrested. And he ended that statement by saying, no masks. Kyiv is at a crossroads in the wake of the contentious Oval Office meeting between President Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. The President, Trump, reacting this way.
I want to see it end fast. I don't want to see this go on for years and years.
Overnight, the president making the decision to temporarily pause the delivery of all military aid to Ukraine. That impacts more than $1 billion worth of arms and ammunition. And this is not the first time Trump has paused aid to Ukraine. Joining us now, News Nation's senior national security contributor and former U.S. Air Force Assistant Vice Chief of Staff, General Richard Newton. Good morning to you, as always. Maybe a negotiating strategy by pausing the assistance. How much damage might it do to diplomatic talks?
Well, good morning, Marnie. This is obviously a significant development, actually an unprecedented development. I think the long-term aspect of this, the end game here is to get to meaningful ceasefire, then peace negotiations. But in the short term, it will be damaging to the diplomatic talks, not only U.S. certainly Ukraine, but also Europe and so forth. It's a ploy by the president to really show Zelensky that the displeasures we see here on that Friday Oval Office discussion, but the ensuing discussions that have been made from Zelensky with European leaders and now the United States. We'll see how this unfolds, but my bottom line, this is very concerning, especially on the aspect we're into 3 years of war between Russia and Ukraine. My bottom line here is, Putin, his strategic goal here is still to topple Zelensky in Ukraine and put in a Kremlin-led puppet government. But hopefully that will not happen anytime soon or ever.
When you say concerning, do you mean concerning for Ukraine, which needs the United States to end this war and defend itself, or concerning for the U.S.? Could somehow this backfire?
I'm concerned for U.S. national security interests first and foremost. And those interests certainly lie in the fact of us supporting Ukraine in its effort to try to, not only deter Putin from acting, in future conflicts, but also to come to some peaceful conclusion of the conflict. I'm with President Trump. I absolutely agree that the bloodshed needs to end. The fact that there's been hundreds of thousands of soldiers on both sides who've lost their lives, been wounded, much less the terror that's been rained on against the Ukrainian people from Putin since February 22nd of 2000 or February 24th of 2022, when you and I were actually on air. So all that, however, I think underscores that's where the main U.S. national security interest is getting to a conclusion here. But I'm not sure I agree with the president regarding halting all U.S. assistance at this point. I'll continue. When Putin is facing economic challenges at home, he's having difficulties recruiting. He's having to call up more North Korean troops to try to dislodge Ukrainian forces that are actually still in the Kursk region in Russia and so forth. So this is the timing of this, just in my view, is very difficult to ascertain.
I want to get your thoughts on just negotiating with Vladimir Putin. From the Trump administration, and this was reiterated in an interview in the last 24 hours by the vice president, was the trust but verify approach. Is that the right approach, given some of the concerns and fears that Putin will not hold a deal based on previous agreements?
I think going into a negotiated efforts here, first and foremost, the ceasefire, then the long-term peace agreement. I think he has to establish some trust. As Secretary Rubio, frankly, has really laid out effectively. But then President Trump backed that up, I think, appropriately. I liked his terminology of trust but verify. But my bottom line is I don't believe we can trust Putin at this point, especially on the heels of him, frankly, he's even demanding more territory that he hasn't even seized yet in Ukraine, Marnie. The fact is that he has not let up on terrorizing innocent Ukrainian civilians on the relentless attack still in Ukraine. And so, no, we can't trust him at this point. But eventually, at a negotiating table, you have to establish, and I've negotiated with the Russians, some modicum of trust, yes, but you've got to sternly verify that whatever goes into in terms of agreements is followed up with strong verification tools, as well as that you continue to provide diplomatic support, economic support, and even military support, in this case to Ukraine, so that you have a not only discernible peace, Marnie, but one that is sustained, as well as my final point is that deters Russia and Putin from ever attacking Ukraine again in the future.
We'll see how the president relays that message tonight in this joint session of Congress. General Richard Nunez, as always, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Marnie.